And as you know, there is only a portion of that which is in corporate asset purchases. It's roughly, take it or leave it, 200 billions relative to over 2 trillions for the entire asset purchase program. I think on that, the strategy is going to have to review what the bank can do, should do, how much it collides with the mandate, and if so, I think we should very expressly say so. But if it doesn't, I'm giving you a for instance. It's not something that has been opined upon, that has been considered at all, but you know, you can look at what ESG, for instance, criteria are respected by the issuers. You can assess the value of collaterals in order to determine what is the risk associated with collaterals and so on and so forth. So those are just, you know, a few areas. In addition to that, there is work also that is ongoing in various departments at the ECB to make sure that the climate risk is actually embedded in the work that they do in terms of risk assessment, in terms of models, in terms of their forecast, and you know, this is work in progress. It's not something that is completed and that is finished. I will myself finish with the area of financial stability, because there is also work going on in order to define better stress testing, and that framework normally should be completed at the end of 2020 at the latest. This is work that is internal to the ECB, and that is separate from what the SSM is doing as well separately. We also have, together with the European Systemic Risk Board, we have a pilot framework that is under review as well, and which should be completed as well in the fall of 2020. So there is a lot going on, and as you will see in the press release that you receive later on in a very short while, actually, you will see that environment sustainability is captured very well in the description of our strategy review. It's right in their second bullet point. Oh, you asked me another one?
Yeah, the real estate and inflation policy.
Oh, yes. Real estate. As I said, we will not leave any stone unturned. And how we measure inflation is clearly something that we need to look at. Are we going to resolve the issues? I doubt it. You know, clearly the issue of housing and the distinction between the home owner occupancy versus the non-owner occupancy, the reality and the perception, the difference between large urban centers and rural areas, all of that is infinitely difficult to apprehend and to calculate, but we need to look at it and we need to understand. And if we believe that there is a clear miscalculation between what is there, which is roughly 6% of budget, if I recall, and what is the perception, we need to understand why. And if there is a real difference, which there might well be, then we need to pass that on to Eurostat and have Eurostat do further and additional work. I'm not suggesting that it's going to be resolved in 1 year. You know, when I was finance minister in France, we had our issues with the value of real estate, and it took a lot of time.
Mr. Ferris?
Tom Ferris from the Wall Street Journal. Madame Lagarde, I had a follow-up question on negative interest rates. It seems that there's growing skepticism within the Governing Council about the side effects of having interest rates below zero for a long period of time. We saw in the minutes from the December meeting there was some discussion about this. Was that discussed again today? Is that are they concerns that you share, that negative rates could have been in place for 5 years already and could be in place for years into the future? Are you concerned about the impact of that on the economy? The second question was how you view negative rates compared with QE as a stimulus tool. If the Eurozone economy were to slow during the course of the year, which tool do you think you think you might be the ECB might turn to first to stimulate? Thank you.
Am I concerned? I'm concerned about low rate, because low rate is predicated on low growth, and I would much rather have much higher growth, higher rates. This would be a really nice problem to have to deal with, but this is not the situation we have at the moment. And you will see that as part of our strategy review, we are going to look at the potential side effects of the current circumstances, which are low rate. I mean, let alone negative, but we have had low rates for a period of time. And that hampers our ability to respond in case of exogenous shock, as you know. Slower growth. I think we'll cross that bridge when we have to cross that bridge. But as you also know, different tools apply to different portion of the yield curve. And we will, let's hope we don't have to do that, because growth doesn't slow and growth continues to not only stabilize but accelerate in the going future. That would be a nice problem to have to deal with. But if it did not, then we really have to ask ourselves at which end of the yield curve we want to operate, and that will determine which kind of instrument we want to use.
Mr. Ewing?
Thank you, Jack Ewing from the New York Times. Madame Lagarde, I have another climate change question. There was the Bank for International Settlements published a report at the beginning of the week. The Vice President, in fact, wrote a forward to that. And I wondered if you had a chance to look at it, if you had any reaction to it. The main takeaway, I think, was that climate change is a threat to financial stability. And I wonder if you agree with that premise. I mean, I gather from your earlier answer you do, but I would like to perhaps hear a clear statement on that. And then secondly, related question is, will the ECB wait for the strategic review before it incorporates any sustainability or climate change criteria into its monetary policy? In other words, would it wait to adjust the corporate bond purchase program until the strategy review has reached some kind of conclusion? Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's difficult to disagree with that finding of the BIS that climate change is actually a threat to financial stability. And what's more, it's that it's a threat and a risk that is hardly measured and taken into account by many actors. I believe that the action taken by suggested by the BIS, the action recommended by other central banks, I can think of Mark Carney from the Bank of England, for instance, are completely justified. And I was personally very pleased to see that the private sector is actually also taking action in that respect, and certainly would welcome the involvement of other operators, including the accounting firms and those that are setting the international accounting standards, as well as the large asset managers, as we've seen. I think we badly lack harmonized measurement systems that can be generally accepted and that are actually implemented. So that's it is more of a personal view, if I may say, because it has not been debated in the Governing Council, and I'm not suggesting that I would sort of give you the ECB doxa on this matter. I would be surprised if they were very much against that position. What I tried to do when describing for you what we were already doing was to show that while we might not be ahead of the curve yet, we are not sitting on our bottom doing nothing. So we are taking climate change into account in order to improve the way in which we operate at the moment, and wherever we have the option to include climate change as one of our tools, we are doing so. It is going to be an important matter that will be debated during the strategy review. What impact does it have? What consequences should we draw? Where does it impact the way in which we operate? All those questions will have to be debated.
Mr. Siakantaris?
Thank you. Mr. President, the last strategic review addressed an era where inflation was hard to tame, not hard to stimulate. And since then, technology, globalization, even European integration have added efficiency, but have undermined the inflationary pressures. How can this strategic review address with this fundamental shift? And what yardsticks do you think personally should be assessed first for their relevance in today's era? And a follow-up question, we can safely assume by now that ultra-low yields have not been enough of an incentive for governments for fiscal spending for growth. Is there something more efficient, different that the ECB could do or influence in order to catalyze fiscal expansion? Or would it be considered too political? How central do you expect this issue to be in this strategic review? Thank you very much.
You're completely right in that the situation has completely changed from 2003. And as you know, we published a study just before December that sort of takes stock of the last 20 years of euro use and implementation and monetary policy delivery. For 10 years, the goal was to fight inflation because inflation was way too high. And then the financial crisis was the pivotal point at which, you know, eventually inflation was too low. So it's been a reversal of the situation and requires, in my view, that we actually look at the strategy very carefully to see how effective we can be in view of the change of circumstances, some of which are structural factors that are here with us to stay. When you look at the aging of population, when you look at the low productivity, these are probably going to be with us for a long time. So we need, that's, you know, that justifies fully the need for a strategy review. We cannot operate as we did back in 2003, which doesn't mean to say that we have to necessarily change this, that, or the other, but we have to look comprehensively at the effectiveness of our monetary policy. One thing that I know is central and anchored in our considerations will be the mandate that we are given under the treaty, which is that of price stability. That's the primary one. On fiscal expansion, I would first of all observe that at the euro area level, there is a very mild fiscal expansion as we speak. And I would also observe that two of the countries that have fiscal space, and I can think, you know who I'm talking about, two of those countries are now seriously looking, one has certainly gone pretty way out, in order to explore how to expand more fiscally with their respective domestic budget. So there's progress. We just need to all keep at it, not because I want to influence fiscal policy, it's for the budget holders to decide, it's for the authorities that have competence in that respect to decide, but simply because a good fiscal support would give much more effect to our monetary policy. That's why I think it's important that they do.
Mr. Malin?
Jan Malin, Handelsblatt. I have one question on climate change. You have raised quite high expectations on the future role of the ECB in the fight against climate change. Do you not fear that it will be difficult to deliver on that? And my second question is on policy making. Broad consensus in the Governing Council has some obvious advantages, but it might also have some disadvantages like groupthink or the ECB might be vulnerable for mistakes. For example, the Bank of England tried to have people in their monetary policy committee who challenged the existing views within the group. So how important is it for you to reach unanimity or broad consensus in important monetary policy decisions? Thank you.
Thank you very much. You know, on climate change, I know that we will have a debate, and I know that there will be discussions, and it's already out there, that debate. Is there going to be mandate creep? Isn't that going to be a distraction? Why should it be the role of central banks? If they do so, then yet again, the legitimate authorities to implement climate change policies will feel that job is done, they don't have to worry. I'm aware of all that, but I'm also aware of the danger of doing nothing. And I think that, you know, failing to try is already failing. So we should at least try to explore every area where we can actually participate in a determination that is now the determination of the European Commission, of many of the euro area leaders, and which is now also creeping into the private sector. So that's my personal take on that, and I was very pleased to see that the environmental sustainability has found its right space in the monetary policy review that we are embarking upon. On the, you know, I draw a line between consensus building and repressing alternative views, and I can assure you that we are not short of alternative views, right? There are multiple views around the table on multiple aspects of monetary policies. And, you know, I'm not a despotic president of the Governing Council. All views are welcome. All governors have their space and time in order to share their perspective and submit their views. But at the end of the day, and at the end of the process, we still have to complete the introductory statement and release a monetary policy decision if and when it is expected and required. So I don't think it is repressing views. I don't think that it is sparing alternative views. I think it's intended to arrive at the best possible common understanding and a final decision. If we have unanimous decision, it's satisfactory. It means that we are converging all together towards a decision. But it may well be that we do not have unanimous decisions, and that at some stage it will have to be a majority decision. But we need a decision.
Mr. Bauer?
Alessandro Bera, Daily La Stampa. Madame Lagarde, next week the United Kingdom will be formally out of the European Union, and it starts a complex time to the exit. So do you think the European financial system is ready for that? Are you worried in some way for that?
You know, it's one of the questions that I've asked the teams. What happens when Brexit happens? Are we all ready? Have we taken all the steps that we had to take? Have we alerted sufficiently the private sector operators to themselves take the right measures? And my assessment today is that yes, we have. Just to remind you, back in March of 2019, we activated swap lines with the Bank of England to make sure that on both sides of the channel there would be enough euros and sterlings so that operations could continue in a smooth manner despite the implementation of Brexit. We have alerted and reminded the banks of all the necessary measures that they have to take in order to be in a good position to continue to operate irrespective of Brexit. And we have reason, you know, good reason to believe that this is so. And don't forget that, you know, there was this high-level working group between the Bank of England and the ECB at the level of both president and governor in order to make sure that they had checked all the boxes and covered the potential risks. You never know. There can always be a risk somewhere, but I think that in good conscience we have looked at everything that we thought was necessary.
And the final question to Mr. Gürner.
First of all, Happy New Year also to you and to all your colleagues of the ECB. Also one more question for the climate change. In Davos at the World Economic Forum, President Commission Ursula von der Leyen said how important the fight for Europe against the climate change is. And the Bank for Settlements said it is the same view, but we are against a green QE program. What is your view on this issue?
I very strongly support the President of the Commission in that respect, and in many respects for that matter. We are taking steps, and we have taken steps already in order to play the role that we should play concerning the fight against climate change. We will look, as part of the strategy review, at what options we have to be even more intrusive, more active in relation to the corporate purchase plan that we have in place and which continues to operate, as you know, because we are purchasers on a monthly basis of 20 billion euros, and we reinvest as instruments come to maturity. We will look at that and see how we can play our role in accordance with our mandate, indeed. On that word, I think, in accordance with our mandate, indeed, we have to stop the exercise. It's perfect ending. Thank you very much.